Hello and welcome to day 109 of the Not Alone Today chronological Bible reading plan. Today we are beginning the book of 1 Kings. We'll be in 1 Chronicles 21 and then we'll go into 1 Kings chapters 1 and 2 for today. We're still in the English Standard Version for this week. 1 Chronicles chapter 21. Then Satan stood against Israel and incited David to number Israel. So David said to Joab and the commanders of the army, "Go number Israel from Beersheba to Dan and bring me a report, that I may know their number." But Joab said, "May the Lord add to his people 100 times as many as they are. Are they not my lord the king, all of them, my lord's servants? Why then should my lord require this? Why should it be a cause of guilt for Israel?" But the king's word prevailed against Joab. So Joab departed and went throughout all Israel and came back to Jerusalem. And Joab gave the sum of the numbering of the people to David. In all Israel, there were 1,100,000 men who drew the sword, and in Judah 470,000 who drew the sword. But he did not include Levi and Benjamin in the numbering, for the king's command was abhorrent to Joab.
But God was displeased with this thing, and it struck Israel. And David said to God, "I have sinned greatly in that I have done this thing. But now please take away the iniquity of your servant, for I have acted very foolishly." And the Lord spoke to Gad, David's seer, saying, "Go and say to David, Thus says the Lord, 3 things I offer you, choose one of them that I may do it to you." So Gad came to David and said to him, "Thus says the Lord, choose what you will, either 3 years of famine, or 3 months of devastations by your foe, while the sword of your enemies overtakes you, or else 3 days of the sword of the Lord, pestilence in the land, with the angel of the Lord destroying throughout all the territory of Israel. Now decide what answer I shall return to him who sent me." Then David said to Gad, "I am in great distress. Let me fall into the hand of the Lord, for his mercy is very great, but do not let me fall into the hand of man."
So the Lord sent a pestilence on Israel, and 70,000 men of Israel fell. And God sent the angel to Jerusalem to destroy it. But as he was about to destroy it, the Lord saw, and he relented from the calamity. And he said to the angel who was working destruction, "It is enough, now stay your hand." And the angel of the Lord was standing by the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. And David lifted his eyes and saw the angel of the Lord standing between the earth and heaven, and in his hand a drawn sword stretched out over Jerusalem. Then David and the elders, clothed in sackcloth, fell upon their faces. And David said to God, "Was it not I who gave command to number the people? It is I who have sinned and done great evil. But these sheep, what have they done? Please let your hand, O Lord my God, be against me and against my father's house. But do not let the plague be on your people."
Now the angel of the Lord had commanded Gad to say to David that David should go up and raise an altar to the Lord on the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusites. So David went up at Gad's words, which he had spoken in the name of the Lord. Now Ornan was threshing wheat. He turned and saw the angel, and his 4 sons who were with him hid themselves. As David came to Ornan, Ornan looked and saw David and went out from the threshing floor and paid homage to David with his face to the ground. And David said to Ornan, "Give me the site of the threshing floor that I may build on it an altar to the Lord. Give it to me at its full price, that the plague may be averted from the people." Then Ornan said to David, "Take it and let my lord the king do what seems good to him. See, I give the oxen for burnt offerings and the threshing sledges for the wood, and the wheat for a grain offering. I give it all." But King David said to Ornan, "No, but I will buy them for the full price. I will not take for the Lord what is yours, nor offer burnt offerings that cost me nothing." So David paid Ornan 600 shekels of gold by weight for the site. And David built there an altar to the Lord, and presented burnt offerings and peace offerings, and called on the Lord. And the Lord answered him with fire from heaven upon the altar of burnt offering. Then the Lord commanded the angel, and he put his sword back into its sheath.
At that time, when David saw that the Lord had answered him at the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite, he sacrificed there for the tabernacle of the Lord, which Moses had made in the wilderness. And the altar of burnt offering were at that time in the high place at Gibeon. But David could not go before it to inquire of God, for he was afraid of the sword of the angel of the Lord.
1 Kings chapter 1. Now King David was old and advanced in years, and although they covered him with clothes, he could not get warm. Therefore his servant said to him, "Let a young woman be sought for my lord the king, and let her wait on the king and be in his service. Let her die in your arms, that my lord the king may be warm." So they sought for a beautiful young woman throughout all the territory of Israel, and found Abishag the Shunammite, and brought her to the king. The young woman was very beautiful, and she was of service to the king, and attended to him, but the king knew her not.
Now Adonijah the son of Haggith exalted himself, saying, "I will be king." And he prepared for himself chariots and horsemen and 50 men to run before him. His father had never at any time displeased him by asking, "Why have you done thus and so?" He was also a very handsome man, and he was born next after Absalom. He conferred with Joab the son of Zeruiah and with Abiathar the priest, and they followed Adonijah and helped him. But Zadok the priest, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and Nathan the prophet, and Shimei, and Rei, and David's mighty men were not with Adonijah.
Adonijah sacrificed sheep, oxen, and fattened cattle by the serpent stone, which is beside En-Rogel, and he invited all his brothers, the king's sons, and all the royal officials of Judah. But he did not invite Nathan the prophet, or Benaiah, or the mighty men, or Solomon his brother.
Then Nathan said to Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon, "Have you not heard that Adonijah the son of Haggith has become king, and David our Lord does not know it? Now therefore, come, let me give you advice, that you may save your own life and the life of your son Solomon. Go in at once to King David and say to him, 'Did you not, my lord the king, swear to your servant, saying, Solomon your son shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne? Why then is Adonijah king? Then while you are still speaking with the king, I also will come in after you and confirm your words.'"
So Bathsheba went to the king in his chamber. Now the king was very old, and Abishag the Shunammite was attending to the king. Bathsheba bowed and paid homage to the king. And the king said, "What do you desire?" She said to him, "My lord, you swore to your servant by the Lord your God, saying, Solomon your son shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne. And now behold, Adonijah is king, although you, my lord the king, do not know it. He has sacrificed oxen, fattened cattle, and sheep in abundance, and has invited all the sons of the king, Abiathar the priest, and Joab the commander of the army. But Solomon your servant he has not invited. And now, my lord the king, the eyes of all Israel are on you, to tell them who shall sit on the throne of my lord the king after him. Otherwise it will come to pass, when my lord the king sleeps with his fathers, that I and my son Solomon will be counted offenders."
While she was still speaking with the king, Nathan the prophet came in, and they told the king, "Here is Nathan the prophet." And when he came in before the king, he bowed before the king with his face to the ground. And Nathan said, "My lord the king, have you said, Adonijah shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne? For he has gone down this day and has sacrificed oxen, fattened cattle, and sheep in abundance, and has invited all the king's sons, the commanders of the army, and Abiathar the priest. And behold, they are eating and drinking before him, and saying, Long live King Adonijah. But me, your servant, and Zadok the priest, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and your servant Solomon he has not invited. Has this thing been brought about by my lord the king, and you have not told your servants who should sit on the throne of my lord the king after him?"
Then King David answered, "Call Bathsheba to me." So she came into the king's presence and stood before the king. And the king saw, saying, "As the Lord lives, who has redeemed my soul out of every adversity, as I swore to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, saying, Solomon your son shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne in my place, even so will I do this day." Then Bathsheba bowed to her face to the ground and paid homage to the king and said, "May my lord King David live forever."
King David said, "Call to me Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada." So they came before the king. And the king said to them, "Take with you the servants of your lord, and have Solomon my son ride on my own mule, and bring him down to Gihon. And let Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet there anoint him king over Israel. Then blow the trumpet and say, Long live King Solomon. You shall then come up after him, and he shall come and sit on my throne. For he shall be king in my place, and I have appointed him to be ruler over Israel and over Judah." And Benaiah the son of Jehoiada answered the king, "Amen." May the Lord, the God of my lord the king, say so. As the Lord has been with my lord the king, even so may he be with Solomon, and make his throne greater than the throne of my lord King David.
So Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and the Sheritites and the Peletites went down and let Solomon ride on King David's mule, and brought him to Gihon. There Zadok the priest took the horn of oil from the tent and anointed Solomon. Then they blew the trumpet, and all the people said, "Long live King Solomon!" And all the people went after him, playing on pipes, and rejoicing with great joy, so that the earth was split by their noise.
Adonijah and all the guests who were with him heard it as they finished feasting. And when Joab heard the sound of the trumpet, he said, "What does this uproar in the city mean?" While he was still speaking, behold, Jonathan the son of Abiathar the priest came. And Adonijah said, "Come in, for you are a worthy man, and bring good news." Jonathan answered Adonijah, "No, for our lord King David has made Solomon king. And the king has sent with him Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and the Cherethites and the Pelethites. And they had him ride on the king's mule. And Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet have anointed him king at Gihon. And they have gone up from there rejoicing, so that the city is in an uproar. This is the noise that you have heard. Solomon sits on the royal throne. Moreover, the king's servants came to congratulate our lord King David, saying, May your God make the name of Solomon more famous than yours, and make his throne greater than your throne. And the king bowed himself on the bed. And the king also said, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who has granted someone to sit on my throne this day, my own eyes seeing it.
Then all the guests of Adonijah trembled and rose, and each went his own way. And Adonijah feared Solomon. So he arose and went and took hold of the horns of the altar. Then it was told Solomon, Behold, Adonijah fears King Solomon, for behold, he has laid hold of the horns of the altar, saying, Let King Solomon swear to me first, that I will not put his servants to death with the sword. And Solomon said, If he will show himself a worthy man, not one of his hairs shall fall to the earth, but if wickedness is found in him, he shall die. So King Solomon sent, and they brought him down from the altar, and he came and paid homage to King Solomon. And Solomon said to him, Go to your house.
Chapter 2. When David's time to die drew near, he commanded Solomon his son, saying, I am about to go the way of all the earth. Be strong and show yourself a man, and keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways and keeping his statutes, his commandments, his rules, and his testimonies, as it is written in the law of Moses, that you may prosper in all that you do and wherever you turn, that the Lord may establish his word that he spoke concerning me, saying, If your sons pay close attention to their way, to walk before me in faithfulness with all their heart and with all their soul, you shall not lack a man on the throne of Israel.
Moreover, you also know what Joab the son of Zeruiah did to me, how he dealt with the two commanders of the armies of Israel, Abner the son of Ner, and Amasa the son of Jether, whom he killed, avenging in time of peace for blood that has been shed in war, and putting the blood of war on the belt around his waist, and on the sandals on his feet. Act therefore according to your wisdom, and do not let his grey head go down to Sheol in peace, but deal loyally with the sons of Bezaliah, the Gileadites, and let them be among those who eat at your table. For with such loyalty they met me when I fled from Absalom your brother. There's also with you Shimei, the son of Gera, the Benjamite from Bahurim, who cursed me with a grievous curse on the day when I went to Mahanaim. But when he came down to meet me at Jordan, I swore to him by the Lord, saying, I will not put you to death with the sword. Now, therefore, do not hold him guiltless, for you are a wise man. You will know what you ought to do to him, and you shall bring his grey head down with blood to Sheol.
Then David slept with his fathers and was buried in the city of David. And the time that David reigned over Israel was 40 years. He reigned 7 years in Hebron and 33 years in Jerusalem. So Solomon sat on the throne of David his father, and his kingdom was firmly established.
Then Adonijah the son of Eget came to Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon, and she said, Do you come peacefully? He said, Peacefully. Then he said, I have something to say to you. She said, Speak. He said, You know that the kingdom was mine, and that all Israel fully expected me to reign. However, the kingdom has turned about and become my brother's, for it was his from the Lord. And now I have one request to make of you. Do not refuse me." She said to him, "Speak." And he said, "Please, ask King Solomon, he will not refuse you, to give me Abishag the Shunammite as my wife." Bathsheba said, "Very well, I'll speak for you to the king."
So Bathsheba went to King Solomon to speak to him on behalf of Adonijah. And the king rose to meet her and bowed down to her. Then he sat on his throne and had a seat brought for the king's mother, and she sat on his right. Then she said, "I have one small request to make of you, do not refuse me." And the king said to her, "Make your request, my mother, for I will not refuse you." She said, "Let Abishag the Shunammite be given to Adonijah your brother as his wife." King Solomon answered his mother, "And why do you ask Abishag the Shunammite for Adonijah? Ask for him the kingdom also, for he is my older brother, and on his side are Abiathar the priest and Joab the son of Zeruiah." Then King Solomon swore by the Lord, saying, "God do so to me and more also, if this word does not cost Adonijah his life. Now therefore, as the Lord lives, who has established me and placed me on the throne of David my father, and who has made me a house as he promised, Adonijah shall be put to death today." So King Solomon sent Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and he struck him down, and he died.
And to Abiathar the priest, the king said, "Go to Anathoth, to your estate, for you deserve death. But I will not at this time put you to death, because you carried the ark of the Lord before David my father, and because you shared in all my father's affliction." So Solomon expelled Abiathar from being priest to the Lord, thus fulfilling the word of the Lord that he had spoken concerning the house of Eli in Shiloh.
When the news came to Joab, for Joab had supported Adonijah, although he had not supported Absalom, Joab fled to the tent of the Lord and caught hold of the horns of the altar. And when it was told King Solomon, "Joab has fled to the tent of the Lord, and behold, he is beside the altar," Solomon sent Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, saying, "Go, strike him down." So Benaiah came to the tent of the Lord and said to him, "The king commands, come out." But he said, "No, I will die here." Then Benaiah brought the king word again, saying, "Thus said Joab, and thus he answered me." The king replied to him, "Do as he has said, strike him down and bury him, and thus take away from me and from my father's house the guilt for the blood that Joab shed without cause. The Lord will bring back his bloody deeds on his own head, because without the knowledge of my father David, he attacked and killed with the sword 2 men more righteous and better than himself, Abner the son of Ner, commander of the army of Israel, and Amasa the son of Jether, commander of the army of Judah. So shall their blood come back on the head of Joab and on the head of his descendants forever. But for David and for his descendants and for his house and for his throne, there shall be peace from the Lord forevermore." Then Benaiah the son of Jehoiada went up and struck him down and put him to death, and he was buried in his own house in the wilderness. The king put Benaiah the son of Jehoiada over the army in place of Joab, and the king put Zadok the priest in the place of Abiathar.
Then the king sent and summoned Shimei and said to him, "Build yourself a house in Jerusalem and dwell there, and do not go out from there to any place whatever. For on the day you go out and cross the brook Kidron, know for certain that you shall die. Your blood shall be on your own head." And Shimei said to the king, "What you say is good. As my lord the king has said, so will your servant do." So Shimei lived in Jerusalem many days.
But it happened at the end of 3 years that 2 of Shimei's servants ran away to Achish, son of Maacah, king of Gath. And when it was told Shimei, "Behold, your servants are in Gath," Shimei arose and saddled a donkey and went to Gath to Achish to seek his servants. Shimei went and brought his servants from Gath. And when Solomon was told that Shimei had gone from Jerusalem to Gath and returned, the king sent and summoned Shimei and said to him, "Did I not make you swear by the Lord and solemnly warn you, saying, Know for certain that on the day you go out and go to any place whatever, you shall die? And you said to me, What you say is good, I will obey. Why then have you not kept your oath to the Lord and commandments with which I commanded you?" The king also said to Shimei, "You know in your own heart all the harm that you did to David my father. So the Lord will bring back your harm on your own head. But King Solomon shall be blessed, and the throne of David shall be established before the Lord forever." Then the king commanded Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and he went out and struck him down, and he died.
So the kingdom was established in the hand of Solomon.
This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
So today, apologies for the fast-paced reading to start with. And now to do a quick recap of what we read. In 1 Chronicles 21, we read about David's census, the Chronicles account of that census that we read already in 2 Samuel. And then in 1 Kings chapter 1, we saw quite a few things. One, the account of David in his old age, and how a young, beautiful woman was sought out for him to tend to him, even though the king knew her not, which I suppose means they never had sexual intercourse. And then we saw the story of Adonijah setting himself up to be the next king while David was still alive. And of course, that led on to Nathan meeting with Bathsheba to say, we need to interrupt this before it becomes a thing that would stand, knowing that God had planned for Solomon to be the king, and David had made that plan known to Bathsheba. And so Bathsheba goes in to speak to David about this, and then as planned, as agreed with Nathan, Nathan comes in while Bathsheba has just finished speaking to also corroborate the same thing. Of course, that would lead on to Solomon being anointed as king, and Adonijah knows immediately that himself and the people he invited to his own self-proclaimed coronation, they are in danger. They have become enemy of the state, in a manner of speaking. And that will lead on to chapter 2, where we saw David's final words to Solomon. He gives him his final instructions, including some really curious details. For instance, in measuring out judgments to Joab for killing Abner and Amasa, for Shimei, whom he has promised that he won't kill. But now he's telling Solomon, God will tell you how to deal with him, but I still need him dealt with because of what he did to me. And then, of course, after all of that, we just read that David died. He slept with his fathers and was buried. That leads on to Solomon's reign being established. And so in those very early period of his reign, he began to carry out the instructions of his father, and through some curious details, ensures indeed that Joab was killed, that Shimei was put to death, and all of them in some sense justifiably so. And that's where we paused in the story so far. And so just before I spotlight one or two things from those 3 chapters that we have read, let me just give a general overview of the book of 1 Kings, as we tend to do when we are moving into a new book. Now, First Kings is a theological history of, in some sense, the kingship or the monarchy of Israel as a nation. It covers the period from the death of King David, as we already saw from what we read in those first 2 chapters, from the period of the death of King David all the way through to the tragic division of the northern and southern kingdoms. The 12 tribes are such that the northern 10 tribes form what is really known as Israel eventually, when the split happens or when the division happens, and then the southern kingdoms would be known as Judah pretty much. But what we see in 1 Kings is the reign of kings after kings, beginning of course with the reign of Solomon, which covers the first 11 chapters, and then into after Solomon's death, of course, the kingdom is going to split when his son Rehoboam makes a very foolish leadership decision, and then that's going to eventually lead to the splitting of the kingdom into the southern kingdom of Judah and the northern kingdom of Israel. So that's going to cover from chapters 12 to 16. And then when we get into chapter 17, we'll be introduced to the character called Elijah, a prophet of God who ministered about the same time as King Ahab, arguably Israel's most wicked king, working hand in hand with his very wicked wife by the name of Jezebel. So that's pretty much the book of 1 Kings. It's going to end, of course, with the death of Ahab, and then his son Ahaziah would take his place, and then the stage will be set for the continued ministries of the prophets and then eventual downfall of both nations. We'll see that when we get to 2 Kings, and we'll talk more about that. But that's 1 Kings in a nutshell. As the name implies, it's about the accounts of various kings, especially Solomon, and then eventually many other kings that follow, with the kingdoms splitting into two after that. And then, of course, ultimately, both kingdoms are going to end in captivity. But we'll be hearing more about that when we cross over to 2 Kings. In terms of what stood out to me from 1 Chronicles 21, as we reflected on this when we shared on the same thing from 2 Samuel's account of the same census, the main thing that stood out is who is inciting David to do the census, to do the numbering. And 1 Chronicles says it's Satan. Satan stood against Israel and incited David. Whereas when we read 2 Samuel, it says God incited David. And again, just to reiterate what we already mentioned on day 108 about this, there is nothing Satan does that is off script. When I say off script, that is off the control and purview of God. And so even when Satan thinks he's doing something in and of his own accord, in actual fact, as he discovered with putting Jesus to death, or inciting people, as it were, to see to it that Jesus died, what he did not know, that has always been part of the plan. And so Paul will say, had they known, they would not have crucified the King of Glory. So it's the same thing that is happening here. What Satan does, in a sense, is still being done by God, because even Satan himself serves God. Satan himself is under the control of God. And so in inciting David, in this particular instance, it is what God wanted to happen, to bring David and the people to this understanding of, how they are departing from trusting in God to trusting in themselves, and having this self-pride that is absolutely unwarranted, knowing fully well that every victory they have enjoyed, it has come because of God and nothing else. And then in terms of 1 Kings chapters 1 and 2, for chapter 1, what stood out to me is that approach of confirmation. It says in verse 14, chapter 1, verse 14, this is Nathan speaking to Bathsheba. He says, "Then while you are still speaking with the king, I also will come in after you and confirm your words." We know from what we read in Pentateuch that from the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, the truth shall be established. Confirmation is such a very interesting spiritual principle, and one that we shouldn't take lightly. I see it play out here historically, in a sense that, in fact, it seems concocted in this case, but it served its purpose. But really, in the dealings of God with us, God always has a way of confirming his words. This is Nathan saying he will come and confirm the words of Bathsheba. But God has a way of confirming his words when he speaks. Psalm 62 verse 11 says, "Once has the Lord spoken, twice have I heard." While that is a poetic device, essentially, there is also a spiritual meaning that can be gotten from that when God speaks once, there is a way in which the word or the message gets reaffirmed and reconfirmed again and again, such that we hear it, as it were, more than once, in a manner of speaking. This comes into play when we are at crucial decisions and trying to make, choices, being guided and being led by God. Sometimes the leadings of God into what is the right choice for us comes through confirmations of what is up to in our lives and in our journeys, in that sense. And then in chapter 1 verse 48, I also love the principle of succession plan, but in this case in a way that, the testimony of King David after this succession has happened while he was still alive. He says, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who has granted someone to sit on my throne this day, my own eyes seeing it." There is nothing as beautiful as a leader being able to lead to the point of succession and actually seeing this succession plan kick off in their very own eyes. I mean, there's just a blessedness to it, a joy to it, a fulfillment, a sense of fulfillment to it. And it's just alarming that, we live in times when in certain parts of the world, such a thing as this would not be intentionality that goes into succession. And then when the leader dies or leaves the scene for one reason or the other, whatever that might be, there becomes a chaotic journey into filling that space, into having the successor take over. That's an avoidable chaos just by an intentional sense of putting in place a succession plan. One of the sayings, the wise sayings I grew up on from my very early exposure to leadership in my teenage years is the fact that you are not yet successful as a leader until your successor succeeds. And so we are trained, and this is of course within a Christian fellowship setting. The idea is that as you are wrapping up your tenure, you should have done so well as to be able to already have a sense of who your successor should be, and even already begin to prepare them for that responsibility. And then you should still be around long enough to see them actually begin to flourish in stepping into the shoes that you once occupied. And so that just kind of, it's ingrained into us at every level of leadership within the fellowship, that you're not just going to be here forever. And right from when you're starting to take on the assignment or the responsibility, you are doing it with a sense of alertness to what God might be saying about your successor, and to begin to intentionally, nurture one or two people that would be able to stand into or step into those shoes once you have to vacate them in that sense. So that's beautiful. In chapter 2, what stood out to me, to be honest, is just David's, I don't know, it seems like there's a big question mark around David in this very last part of his story. Because I don't understand. On the one hand, of course, give him credit for integrity in being a man of his word. He said he would not kill Shimei. He did not kill Shimei. But at the same time, he orchestrated or set the plan in motion to see to it that Shimei was put to death, to see to it that his grey head will not go down to Sheol in peace, is the choice of words that were used. And I found that quite interesting, especially after ensuring that, the day that Shimei was cursing him, people within David's camp wanted to bring down his head. David said, no, not today. The guy came to, apologize in some sense after David was back as the king. Again, David said, I'm not going to kill you. And he kept to that word. But eventually, when the opportunity was there, on his dying bed, for someone so physically weak that, he couldn't perform the functions he used to perform. Of course, by now, he no longer goes to fight any battles and stuff. And yet, he still remembers what Shimei did and pointed out that it should still be, that justice should still be meted out in that regard. And I just find that quite interesting. We live in an age where we say things like the internet never forgets, because there is also a message there. Just as David did not forget, the internet never forgets. But again, besides the internet, God sees everything, and He's a God of justice. He's a God that is just. He's a God, as much as He's a God that is merciful and love, He's also a just God. And so we want to be aware that we are living in the context of our awareness of the justice of God. There is nothing hidden. There is nothing, the Yorubas will say, Ashegbe osi, ashekpamolowa, which means you can't, if you think you've done something and gotten away with it, there is no such thing. What does exist is the ability to do something and have it hidden, but then only hidden for so long, in that sense. And that's exactly what Shimei's story teaches us as well. We'll turn the page on day 110 and we'll get to see even more about this unfolding story. In terms of the chronological unfoldings of the plan, what we're going to be doing over the next few days is now going, of course, David is dead chronologically, but there are still many other psalms that were written as lamentations by David. So we want to go back to those psalms and take them in a sweep over the coming days. And then once we're done with those psalms of David, we'll also begin to see issues around the preparations for the building of the temple, which Solomon is going to build, the divisions of, the temple personnel. And then we're going to go back to the book of Psalms and see Psalms by the sons of Korah, and it will follow on as we go on in that story like that. This is a good place to turn the page. We'll be together again on day 110. But till then, just remember, you're not alone. Today, God bless you.